Step 5 of the 12 Steps pioneered by AA says that we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Oh shit, this is scary. So, yeah, this can often be one of the steps. This is one of the steps that back in the day they used to say, "This is a step that separates the men from the boys." And although I don't personally think that saying is well, I mean, just I don't even know what to say about that. I mean, everyone knows everyone knows that vaginas are tougher than ball sacks. I mean, like, what else do you need to hear? Like, anyways, but it does service. It does. The sentiment is correct. It is often the step that separates like people from those who are like ready, for, like really committed to change, rather, and likely desperate enough to do something that's really potentially very uncomfortable and scary, and from those who fall back into what is often known as the 1-2-3 shuffle. And a lot of people have been in like an early stage recovery for long periods of time doing the 1-2-3 shuffle, often because the further steps are scary and daunting, and they find people can, our minds can make up any kinds of reasons why not to do this. It's like, oh, I don't need to do that. Why? And the common ones are like, oh, like, why would I bother digging up the past? That's all gone now. There's no reason in looking at my childhood or talking about that. I just need to be present now. I just need to work on what's going on now. Very reasonable and rational, but this work, it illuminates a lot of things. We all have blind spots, and this work shows them. So like in step 4, we made this. Like we made our list, and in step 5 we share it. And the interesting part is, of course, like we admitted to ourselves, to God, and to another human being. And ideally in the 5th step that happens. Well, I shouldn't even say ideally, but like how it's prescribed in the 5th step is that all happens all at once. Like kind of like in a sitting, right? Like you plan a 5th step while you're writing your 4th step. Often, like if you're working with a mentor, they'll say like, hey, like have your 4th step written in 2 weeks, and then we'll do your 5th step on July 24th, 1946, whatever. And we're time traveling, so just roll with it. And and so you make the appointment, you do the step, whatever, and then you prepare yourself. And obviously, like that's part of it, right? Is like inviting your higher power into the process. So it is, like part of that admitting, like you're saying it before God, whatever that means to you, and to another person, and and to yourself, like truly admitting to yourself, like all at once. This is the whole story of what I've been, what I've done, who I've tried to be, who I've failed at, who I have been, where I've succeeded, all of it. And so like to put it all in front of you at once, there's no hiding, there's no like, it really limits the ability to like say yes, but, it's like, oh, I did this, but, it's just like all of it laid bare. And having to sit with all the feelings that come up with this, right? Like all the fear, like what is this person going to think of me? Like what is, like just dealing with the potential shame that comes out, the fear, the sadness, the grief, the anger, the resentment, like all the things that potentially come up going through this. Because lots of the things will come up, like defense mechanisms will be on display very commonly, like very commonly, and not always. Some people breeze through this. It's happened. I mean, I think that people that often do breeze through it probably previously made the commitment to not be fully honest. That's my opinion. I have no proof of that, but I suspect there's something to it, because like if this is done with a real seeking and fearless lens and then disclosed, like there's going to be some stuff that is, I mean, we're all human. We've all done some stuff that we're embarrassed about or ashamed about or just downright never want to talk about. So it's going to be uncomfortable if you're doing it really real. So, to see that all for yourself and then to share it with another person. And, like some of my experiences, like I've always done this with a person in recovery, another person in recovery that has been, down this road, done it before, done these steps, know what it's about, has experience. And Other people do it with a therapist or some kind of other professional, or maybe even like a priest or a monk, a rabbi, whatever. I don't know the rest of the titles, but and often people feel more comfortable with this because like these people are kind of like sworn to these, like they've taken vows and such. Or your therapist, you're just paying them to keep their mouth shut. So I mean, there's that benefit, right? But with therapists, there's the added caveat that if you have actually like, like if there are actually hidden bodies, if you've killed some people or done some other serious stuff, then your therapist might actually have to tell the authorities. So that's one drawback to a therapist. That might be true with priests and monks as well. I'm not totally sure. I never went there, but I do know there's limits of confidentiality with therapists, having worked in the field myself. And so food for thought. But also, I find like there's also, and this is just my belief again, this is opinion, my understanding, my thoughts, that there's something more vulnerable about doing it with just another person, just a person that is also in recovery, because there is none of that. There is not like the element of, oh, this person's being paid to accept me. Like I can say any shit to my therapist, and they're paid to, like I'm paying them to like not abandon me. Like I'm paying them to stay in this relationship and keep healing me, right? Like, and like there's definitely times when like if a therapist can end the relationship if they are super uncomfortable, whatever, they don't have to work with you. But I think that element, like, and same with the priest, like they have to listen to whatever you say, right? Like you can tell them anything, and that's just like that's the thing, right? And with another human being, it's more vulnerable, it's scarier. I mean, maybe you could from the other side of it say like, yeah, well, maybe there's more risk. Like maybe you chose someone that wasn't a good choice, and then you can get hurt. And I'm sure that's happened to many people. It's never happened to me, but like I chose well, I guess. I chose people that and I built trust with them. I built trust over time. I didn't leap into these things. I got to know the people I worked with, I built trust. So I knew I could do this. But there's something really, like, because the difference, I'm not going to go. The difference being is that, like, when I told this stuff to another human being, just another human being, not a professional, and having them accept me and tell me, like, yeah, no, I've done some stuff like that too. Like, on all my worst things, like the way I hurt people and mistreated people and just felt ashamed, like, to hear back, like, my guide, like, he wasn't, like, like I said this, I think, in the previous step, he wasn't, like, falling asleep, but he was not, like, shocked by anything I said, and I had thought I had done some things that were like totally unforgivable. Like I thought I was no longer allowed to be part of humanity because of what I'd done. I'd hurt all the people I cared about, like in various ways. Like I was physically abusive to some people I loved. I beat up my dad a couple times. I put my hands on a woman. Like lots of stuff that I just was ashamed of. Really, really ashamed of. But I had to shine the light on to be free of, or else it would have ate me up for the rest of my life. Like it would, and it's not like it's just like nothing to me today, but I'm not burdened by it, and largely today because I don't do that anymore. I don't punch and kick people that aren't trying to punch and kick me back. Like kickboxing is one of my hobbies, so I'll just put that out there just to make that clear. But I don't, I don't live that way today. So, doing it with either one has their benefits for sure. Like I said, this process gave me a bunch more freedom and freedom to come back to humanity. And a skillful person, and I think like in a lot of ways, priests and monks and such can be really great, and same with therapists can be really great in this way because they can really tune into your like what your patterns are, because that's the bit in the step that says we admitted the exact nature of our wrongs. And, so of course there's like, as a person who's just going through this process for the first time, often there's blind spots and these patterns haven't emerged or become crystal clear yet. So, you'll be like telling your story and you'll be like, and your guide, a skillful guide will be like, hey, look, like like when you're around, like when you're in a workplace, like and you're dealing with coworkers, you really seem to put on this people-pleasing persona. Or, like when you're around your kids, you really become this kind of martyr savior type of person. Just like these kinds of things, like putting together these patterns that will emerge, from a skillful listener will be able to identify. And that's the exact nature bit, right? Like the exact nature bit isn't, like I beat up my dad, but like underneath that stuff, is it like I was a really resentful, I was full of, I was full of fear. I didn't know how to communicate. I wasn't willing to listen to what other people had to say to me. Like there's things underneath this. And like a big one for me was I wasn't willing or able to use my voice. And often, I guess not often, but like sometimes as a result of that, it exploded in violence. I let myself build up and build up and build up. Like the vast majority of the violence I described was like I would kick a hole in a wall. There was only, in truth, a limited number of times where I was violent towards a person. I mean, it was enough to make me feel, it was enough to be really painful to carry around. But the most of it was I would destroy things or I'd punch things, like this. But it's still violence, right? Or I would, yell and scream at people. That's still forms of violence, of course, right? But that was a big pattern. I didn't speak up. I didn't say how I felt to people. And so a skillful guide will help you see these patterns and be able to identify them to move on to the further steps. But, I just really can't say enough about this, how like having a trusted person, just like, and like often, like it's said that, people with addictions will like try and skirt around this by like, showing little bits of themselves to, spreading the suffering around. Like I had a friend tell me once, like, well, I've told everything to like someone, but just not one person. Like everyone knows a little bit of it, and it's definitely not the same because like you don't have that effect of letting someone see all of you and then like face, am I accepted or not? Like will this person reject me? Because that's a huge ask, right? Like to see if someone seeing you fully exposed and naked in front of them, will they accept you? Will they love you still, as you've grown to know that they do now? If you've arrived at this point, hopefully, and it's that's shortchanging yourself, like if you go and tell everyone little bits of it, it really shortchanges you of the full potential for healing. So yeah, when I did a full fifth step, it really changed my life, and I've heard that from other people, and I've seen it in other people. Like I've seen other people dramatically change after doing this step. When their first step, when their foundation is in order, because lots of times people go through the steps and they're still struggling with relapsing and things, and it's not the worst thing to keep going, even though you're still acting in your addiction. But like I often see when there is a cessation of addictive activity, and then like through this fifth step, I see like people, like their eyes light up, they become alive in a way that they probably haven't been in a while, and like just returning to being part of humanity. It's such a beautiful thing to see and to be part of, and that's what makes this 12-step work such a profound gift, to be able to, to do like what I'm doing right now and just offer reflections on the steps. This is an expression of my 12th step, of sharing what I've gleaned out of this process and sharing my experience, because seeing it happen in other people it's real magic. It's real magic, and I wish that for anyone who's listening to this, that you do take that chance and give yourself the gift of going through this process. I've touched on it, but like one of the principles that's associated with this step is openness, and a question that might be associated with it is, how do I trust? And it's a big question, isn't it? How do I trust? Can I trust fully? Another principle that could be associated with this step is integrity, and I think that one pretty much speaks for itself. Taking accountability for all one's past actions, deeds, and misdeeds is that's a bedrock of integrity, yes. And I know mine has certainly grown after doing this process. And it's so much of it because someone showed me that I was okay, even after all of it. I was able to then start stepping into my integrity and owning things in the moment. And as a result of owning things in the moment, realizing like, oh, like these old ways I've been living, they actually just hurt me and everyone else. And I'm still okay despite that. I'm still good enough, even though I've made all these mistakes. and it's allowed me to change. It's allowed me to become the person that I am today. And when I tell people things like, "Oh, I used to have a violent history," or this and that, people look at me like I've got two heads, you know. And I mean, it might, it might seem like that to you if you're listening, that some dude that's sharing meditations on Insight Timer has that kind of past. But there you have it. So until next time, friends, I hope you get what you need today. I hope you feel full of life and joy, and be well.